Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to Pounds Breakfast. It is Thursday, the 20th of October. Guys, if you are a little bit tired, then so am I. We had a super late night last night. We looked at that Tesla earnings report and then listened into the shareholders conference call. So if that was your first time experiencing something like that, let me know in the comments. It wasn't as big as we would have liked to have seen. Tesla in past times has really moved the market. So again, it's about showing up and being prepared for an event that something big happens. We can obviously take advantage of that. Yes, so I'm struggling a little bit today. I won't lie. I only managed to wrap up, shut down the studio at around about 2 or 3 this morning. So yeah, if you see me else, Fabian, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. But listen, for everybody that did stick around for yesterday evening's broadcast, absolutely well done. We streamed for about a total of about 5.5 hours yesterday. Which is it's certainly a long haul. So if you made it through all of those sessions, massive well done. We killed the markets yesterday in the New York Stock Exchange Open, but a slightly quieter Pounds for Breakfast yesterday morning. But I suspect today we're going to see a little bit of volatility this morning as London markets have already or about to have opened. So we're going to see some things busy happening. And there's a little bit of news that I want to discuss. We've got a quick little bit of time. We obviously want to break this down. And we're going to start on a local front. And I think something important to pretty much everybody living in SA at the moment, as well as Gauteng, is there's a current case at the moment where ex-mayor for Joburg pleads the court for what is claimed to believe a unlawful removal from office, right? Previously, Joburg was being run by the DA, and I believe that the ANC is now going to be taking over, right? So there's a whole bunch of controversies on this in terms of what that means. Obviously, it's where you obviously sit and align yourself from a political standpoint. But again, it's never good to see accusations of unlawful type activity. So obviously, that's not great if you're living in Joburg. Not great at all. I have seen a lot of the work that this particular mayor has been doing in Joburg, and it really seems like she's been pushing to really change things around. It'll be very sad to see them not get to run their full term and see what the full effect could end up being. Looking at the UK, we see that we have another minister that is ousted, and I'm going to gutter her name or butcher her name, and that's a Suella Braverman, who is essentially resigned. So this is a host of political issues that are currently happening within the UK. And again, there are speculations at this point in time that Hunt is still in control of the economic responses following that disastrous mini budget that we obviously saw. The budget that came in, that budget that got reversed. So I think the pound is going to definitely be under continued pressure. They had some temporary wins in terms of some of their CPI numbers as well as Europe. But obviously, the political environment will continue to outshadow those markets. Now, big up for today is Tesla misses revenue on expectations, right? We were live for this one, and there's a really quick summary that I'd like to show you guys, because I do believe a lot of the news reporting right now has a bias against Tesla, and I'll show you why, right? So have a look at this. So I'm going to show you guys quickly. The simplest way of showing you the earnings is currently sitting on TradingView, and I want you just to quickly see this really quickly, right? So the surprise estimate was positive. The EPS was positive by 4.89%. However, estimates on revenue only missed estimates by 0.03%, and Wall Street is undecided about what that means. We listened to the call, it sounded positive. Under these economic times, Tesla is continuing to spend a ton of money on R&D, developing new products, developing new technologies, yet while under R&D, still making a profit. So it all sounds very positive, but it seems that we're in this weird stage. And we'll talk about this maybe towards the end of the broadcast, but Wall Street is really looking at some of these stocks and going, great numbers, but. So I wonder who's doing the but part and where these economists are busy sitting. Because if you listen to the call and you look at the economic times we're in, everything pointed to me that this was a positive data release, right? But again, I'm not an economist. Who am I? What do I know? I'm just some dude sitting on YouTube, right? It's just my opinion at the end of the day. But based on what I know and based on what I expected, I do expect this to be a temporary negative news type of scenario, right? If we have a look at the Netflix stock, right? Netflix stock surges. They got a expectation of only about 1 million new subscribers. They got 2.4 million net additions on their subscriber base, right? Netflix shot to the stars, and then it's saying that Wall Street seems split on the future. Over what future, right? They're bringing in they're bringing in a lower tier subscription. They're bringing in ads. They're bringing in a ton of things here, and Wall Street's uncertain. If Wall Street's uncertain about that, then what are they certain about, right? Because in the past, we've seen this, and the thing I want to hint to is we might be seeing a bubble, right? Where data's coming through, things are seeming positive, and yet we're still seeing things decline. And that could be a popping of a particular bubble. We've seen tech stocks, we've seen some of these stock evaluations overnight do insane percentages. And maybe, this recession is a lot deeper than anybody is looking at, because we're seeing positive data. In a normal market, the markets would have eaten this up. This would have been on every headline. Netflix is doing so well. There's all these, documentaries about how Netflix is going to fail and they're not going to make it. They have an extra 5-6 major streaming competitors, but yet still added 2.4 million subscribers to their net balance sheet. So again, we might be definitely in for some sort of economic bubble at this point in time. Now, quickly moving into some of the fundamental data, we're going to look at the S&P 500 heat index this morning, and we can see again it's pretty much a mixed board for the day yesterday. We obviously had New York Stock Exchange bull run that was followed by a little bit of a bear run, and really just sitting in a range overall. So just so that you are aware, overall net, I would say neutral for the day. We have some items that have picked up, but generally speaking, net neutral. We got about 1% up, 1% down across the board. But I'd really look at this as about a net neutral type of move within the markets. Okay, looking at the economic calendar in terms of some of the fundamentals, the big item for today, where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my attention, is going to be in this initial jobless claims, and I will look at existing home sales, but we are going to be trading initial jobless claims. So this afternoon's dollars for lunch is going to be slightly earlier. We're going to start dollars for lunch at 2:15, so we can catch that 2:30 release, right? I did put that in the Telegram group. There's some sort of bug in terms of my network here. It seems when we're starting the streams, they run for about a minute and they break. So I'm going to do a full reboot of all the systems this morning so that we have a clean run for the New York Stock Exchange this afternoon. But just remember, initial jobless claims. The whole point about this is we've seen a lot of strong fundamental data on the dollar. Are we going to start to see that negative fundamental data? Are we going to see the dollar come off those lows or off those highs? Because if it does, it means we could see some normality from an indices perspective. But if we don't start to see that, right, remember the Fed is sitting down on the 2nd. That's not all too long from now. It's less than 2 weeks from now. And they're going to come in with a flying hammer. We also have the midterm elections in the US. So there's a lot of big things that are happening that are essentially shaping the future of not only current markets, but what I think to be for the balance of 2023. Elon did say in his speech and in his discussion that 2023 is considered to be a deeper recession across the board. So whenever you have a thinker like that who has all this data, speaking about stuff like that, obviously it's something we need to be prepared for. And again, our job is not to predict the future. Our job is just to be aware of it, to be in a position to be able to capitalize should we see some of those moves. So we're going to start this morning by moving into the live trading session, purely from a perspective that we obviously don't have too much time left this morning to obviously look at some of the other fundamentals. So we are going to neaten up these charts really quickly, and we're purely going to be looking at US 30, German 30, as well as NASDAQ, right? So let's jump in, and we're going to move into our live trading as the the London session gets underway, and we can start to see some of that volatility. Okay, so I'm currently looking at a 15 minutes on the left-hand side. I'm looking at a 15 minutes dead center, and German 30, I'm also going to switch over to 15 minutes. I just want to show you guys something really quickly and noteworthy, right? If we have a look at where US 30 is currently sitting, right? I had a position last night in our session. I was looking for some buys in this region, right? Looking at US 30. US 30 failed to break any sort of resistance levels and broke through dynamic supports, right? However, I want to just point out the fact that we have broken out this morning, and that was part of the strategy that I was teaching and showing about last night. For those of you who have your live accounts, we are going to have a dedicated strategy session so I can show you guys how to catch some of these breakout trades early in the morning, right? Extremely, extremely profitable. But what I would like to just point out is the fact that we had this pullback over the course of this morning. It started around about 7:15 this morning, pulled back over the breakout area, and we've essentially got what looks like a retest, right? So have a look at that. So we got that breakout, pull back for a retest, and this could be the leg of the next bull run. So what we want to do here is we obviously just want to make sure we are prepared and ready for this next bull run should we end up seeing it. Now, I think the best way that we can essentially map out price today is I would be looking at something along the lines of this, right, from a price action perspective. Now, we very well might see, right, that we're going to catch and pick up support somewhere along this level. So I'm looking for, do we pull back into that 500 period moving average, right? And then do we continue towards the top side? If we start to continue to make these moves to the top side, I'm not going to jump in a half trade in the middle of the sky here, but I would like to see us get above this zone right here, right? So looking at all of these resistance levels, I would really like to get on USDT for a long in that zone, and I would really like to get on USDT for a short in this zone right there. Okay, so those are going to be my two zones, giving you those exact levels. For a short, I'm looking at anything below 30,393. I'd say on average, I'd say the 30,400, right? In general is that range. And for a potential buy, the 30,500, right? So 30,400, 30,500. Between that range is about 1,000 pips. So within that 1,000 pip range, I consider this move just to be, right, dead man zone in this zone. Now we see a very similar thing looking at NASDAQ and looking at German 30, going onto a minute time frame. Same type of structure we're seeing play out on the NASDAQ. And again, that is why I'm of the opinion that we are going to see some sort of substantial move. Now, again, whether the markets are going to wait for the US jobless data, very, very possible. But I think just something noteworthy to point out here. Let's have a look here. Let's do this. I just want to be paying attention this morning to where we could find some sort of support level. And I'm going to utilize Fibonacci on the NASDAQ this morning because I just want to see, are we coinciding with known levels, and what are those potential breakout points? So that pullback happened just about to the 61.8. The next move happened. Yeah, so I would really like to see. So these fib levels aren't tying up exactly. They're not as neat as I'd like to see them, but I'd like to see if the NASDAQ holds up above the $11,022 range, right? If it does, I'd really like to start looking at that much more seriously for a buy. Same thing on US30. See, US30 is pulling back down, NASDAQ pulling back down, and German 30 more than likely doing the exact same thing this morning, right? German 30 giving us a much better level or understanding of where its support might lay. And we've got a fib level just sitting south of our current position. So German 30, I would say if we break the 12,613 mark on German 30 from a support perspective, and we see a similar trend on our other instruments, then I definitely think that is where I would start to highly consider that sell move as valid. Now, in terms of this current move, right, just let's have a look here. So I'm just going to scale my charts just so they all seem on a similar scale. I think this is a bit zoomed out here. Just get one or two in. There we go. That looks good. So another thing I just want to point out really quickly is that okay, I saw structure a little bit earlier, but it seems we haven't yet broken that. But I think another thing we just have to be aware of, and I think what we can potentially use this morning, if you are going to be monitoring this after our session ends together in terms of our live, essentially just want to be looking at these zones, right? I just want to make sure that, if we break resistance on RSI, that we are aware of it, and if we break support. So it looks like we're smashing through support this morning. I just want to confirm, I'm going to place in a feeler here, right? So markets don't look happy across the board for a sell, right? So markets look like they definitely want to potentially continue in the sell momentum. NASDAQ is smacking that market bottom. German 30 is the last one to go. So if we do see that push through past German 30, then obviously that's something I would like to follow and get involved in. But I'm just going to go ahead and set up an alert on German 30 because I would like to see it press through support. Also, just to be aware and cognizant of is, how does NASDAQ handle some of these supports in its lower regions? So at the moment, US 30 is pushing into profit. But again, this is a little bit of a spike, so we could potentially see some sort of pullback. But again, this could very well be our dynamic resistance zone. Another level we just need to be cognizant of, right, is going to be this level over here. We just need to be aware that markets can, and it is possible to retrace down to support and then do a pullback. And what we're going to do here is we're just looking at, right, whenever there's a big bull run, there's always almost a correction. So we can see the bull market, these are the impulses, and we're seeing the correction. So we are technically scalping into support, which is not ideal. It's not an ideal type trade situation. But there's our 78.6 and our 88.2 just below us. So we are currently resting on the 78.6, and we are resting on, and 88.2 is just south of our current position, which could coincide with this dynamic resistance level. Now again, how we can deal with this morning, if you've got 1 or 2 trades in here, it doesn't matter. What we can deal with this morning is having a look at the RSI on a 1 minute time frame. Is, do we end up going through from a resistance perspective? If we do, I'm very happy to swap these trades around and hold them as long-term moves, because we could be getting that pullback down to just a retest of this bull move here, right? So just a correction on the bull move, and then we could be seeing stocks fly to the top side, which very well might be the case. I just want to make sure what is our counterparts doing here. Yeah, so German 30 gave us that bit of a pullback there, and potentially having a look at that there. So I'm going to reverse that trade there, and essentially I'm going to leave my hedged sell in place, and I'm basically going to place my sell over the last resistance level, and I'll place my stop loss below that last sell. So regardless of which way this goes, I've got a hedged position, and a hedged position means that whether this market continues to buy, I will still be in a buy, and if it continues to sell, I'll still be in a sell. But once we break either of those levels, that 30,495, or alternatively that 30,500 or 30,400, regardless of which direction it breaks, I'm in a trade. And remember, I'm only holding one trade in either direction. Once we make a break, then I'll add positions in terms of where we go from there. But we're just going to have a look. If we get stuck into a range, that's obviously not ideal for a trading session. We don't want to be holding a range in the mornings, in the evenings, actually ever. I hate holding ranges. But we're just going to see how this one ends up playing out. So I believe the big factor for today in terms of what might dominate indice markets is definitely going to remain around, what sort of data do we get in relation. This is a 4-hour time frame. What sort of data do we get in relation? I think that's more accurately represented there. What do we get in relation to the dollar strength? Now, this is US 30, and I just want to point out the fact that even though all the signs look negative, right, and there's a ton of Fibonacci levels there, if I pull back this level just on a 4-hour, I just want to show you guys something. This is a little bit of our analysis from yesterday. And just if you can try as best you can ignore some of those other crazy lines we have there, then I just want to point out and bring to attention the fact that, this is the zone that we're in, right? We're technically in a breakout zone from an indices perspective towards the top side, right? So that is obviously pretty important to know and obviously understand. And it's now going to be the deciding factor over, what is the dollar going to do? Are we going to see some weakness? Are we going to see a continued pullback? Are we going to see a continued long? Really, the jobless claims could set the tone. But again, based on everything else we've seen from the dollar, counterintuitive to what we've seen in the past. So it looks like we're definitely in a range this morning. These mornings are definitely starting to seem a lot more choppy, especially after earnings. Let's open up our other US30 chart and just get a little bit more into the detail. You see the way price is holding off on that 78.6. It's a bit of a tricky one this morning because it can go either way, right? This could definitely be support, could definitely act as support, and we see that buy momentum. But based on the momentum from this morning, on the start of the London session, it definitely seems like, you know, markets are aware that something's not right on US30. Okay. Let's give it a look. Yeah, sorry guys, when I'm super tired. Wow. Dwayne, if you've got that USD ZAR trade, USD ZAR is, I think, trading at 1835 last time I just saw, 1830 if I'm not mistaken. So if you're holding at USD ZAR trade, 1833, right? So if you caught 1803 to 1833, that is a massive, massive, massive trade. Remember, we're not yet at year end, and I did explain we could see that 19 rand to the dollar, and it's certainly not looking out of shape or out of sight or out of question at the moment, right? We potentially are about to peak that 13th of October level, right? So we could potentially peak that 1855 mark. So yeah, USD ZAR is going to be something of a wild ride. Okay, so we are definitely going in for those. The sell is definitely the way to go. So it seems that we're going to continue this trend towards the downside. Okay. Okay, beautiful stuff. So I'm pretty much going to hold that and let it do its thing. And we're going to continue some further analysis. We've got about 6 minutes left. So let's look at what other positions or what opportunities are available to us from an FX perspective. I'm going to start this off on the dollar index, as we always do. Just having a look at where the dollar is sitting and what could we expect this afternoon from a jobless claims. So obviously just understanding the fact that, you know, we are in this resistance level. I suppose let me zoom out and just give you guys a bigger picture of where we are on the dollar overall, right? So we're in this channel. Obviously we need to understand that there's a 4-hour time frame. So dollar is rallying. The index is a representation of the dollar against all other major currencies, primarily focusing on the euro, the pound, and the yen. It's most heavily weighted against the euro, pound, and yen. So when we look at that, we just look at this last moment in time, just looking at from last month, the 28th, so 28th of September, and we just look at all these levels, we can see that we're in this downwards, you know, we've got these lower highs, right? That's an important thing to understand. Now, the other thing that I also just want to point out is the fact that we originally had this channel that was busy forming, right? So whether resistance is part of this level here or resistance slightly above, I'm not 100% certain. But what I am certain of is that resistance currently sits at 113 and 42 pips, right? So 113.42, 113.42. So whether we get, and again, those jobless claims, if we get a higher than expected number, it means more people filing for unemployment. It's bad for the dollar. We get a lower than expected number, it's supposed to be good for the dollar. So that is going to essentially be the quick tool we're going to use to essentially look at the markets as we go into that New York Stock Exchange session. And that's going to be one of the fundamental items we're obviously going to look at. Looking at the Euro USD this morning, right, we can pretty much see we have very, very little change from this from a structural perspective, right? We still have a rising market structure at this moment in time, even though we haven't made yet a high off of that previous dollar weakness, right? We saw that previous dollar weakness come in, and yeah, we have not yet broken that. But what we do need to understand is we are ranging, and we're more than likely going to range back into parity, right? Meaning €1 buys $1. So that is essentially from a scalping perspective, whether you're an FX trader, if you like, you know, these kind of structures, then obviously that might be something you may be interested in. And again, looking at USD ZAR, I've liquidated most of my positions here in order to prepare for that Tesla trading session, because obviously I didn't want to risk a larger account on some of those Tesla stocks. But in any event, we are obviously still bouncing off that 78.6. Where we are now is certainly a little bit of resistance. I would certainly say, depending how many trades you've got, I know Dwayne's saying he does currently have one, well, I don't know how many positions you've got, but you are still in ZAR. This is definitely an area you want to consider taking some of your profits, or alternatively, essentially closing or shutting down some of your volume in one position. So if you've got a, you know, one lot trade, you might want to reduce that to half lot as an example, purely from a resistance perspective. Moving into some of the commodities this morning, I want to just chat about Brent, because where Brent's obviously currently sitting is obviously pretty much a key level, and I just want to drop down into 30 minutes. What we need to understand with Brent is that we were currently sitting at $89 to a barrel, right? We got that push down. Now what we're starting to see with Brent is that we're getting a ton of these bear traps, right? We've got market structure, we've got support, we get a temporary break. I was in Aslam with this trade and it smacked us both, but ultimately resulting in a turnaround and a break of structure and a movement back into bull territory or bull momentum. So we need to start anticipating with Brent that it does not react off of support the way we generally look at markets reacting. Example, we've got a bigger bear trap within this bigger market structure, because if you have a look at this, Brent should have started reacting off that $91 an ounce or $91 a barrel, and we still start to see that bull markets based on price action. We got this initial move to the downside, but then within that we pushed back up to top side, hit resistance, and this I think it was on Monday. Let's just check the dates here. 18th, yeah, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, where we expected to see some buy momentum. We got an overextension of the market to the downside, right? This is a bear trap. It's to catch people into sells. Do two things, right? It's supposed to take out long traders, get them into a sell, go back up, take out those sell traders, getting them into a long, and then ultimately, you know, freeing up liquidity. Most times after bear and bull traps, we generally go into a bit of a range, right? A range is essentially just collecting liquidity, and then its next move is revealed. So I'm definitely seeing there's a lot more, I would say, market structure manipulation on Brent than what I've seen in the past, just from that perspective, right? When we're seeing these sneaky little grabs, yeah, it's not always ideal, and we don't always want to see that. Continuing in with the commodities, we're seeing that gold is certainly giving us a sign that there's a bit of fear in the market, because gold is selling off, right? And when I say fear in the market, I don't mean you know, fear towards, you know, where things are currently sitting, but when we see times of economic uncertainty, generally in most cases gold is treated as a safe haven. We're seeing an imbalance where the dollar is being favored as a safe haven in relation to the rest of the world. So that tells us that the markets aren't necessarily fearful for economic collapse, but fearful for currency uncertainty. In most cases where there's been economic uncertainty or currency collapse, everybody rushes to commodities and says, well, hey, if something collapses, at least I've got gold, silver, copper, wheat, corn, whatever the case may be, gold, diamonds, as an example. What we're seeing in this particular case is, even though there is economic uncertainty and the markets are flooding into the dollar as the world reserve currency, we're not seeing that being translated into gold at the same time. So this tells me there's obviously quite a bit that the markets are unsure about, and gold acts like a little bit of a heartbeat for the markets, right? So when we see gold acting normally, we see markets acting normal. When we see gold acting abnormally, generally that's also a sign that we are in abnormal state of markets. Yeah, so we're in a range this morning, guys. So on our sells, we're moving into a buy. On our buys, we're moving into a sell. So this is not a structure that I enjoy trading. And specifically, even if we look at this continued sell market here, I'm going to get out of these trades, and I'll tell you why in a second, right? If you look at this market structure, we want to see that continued sell motion happen towards the downside. We're often seeing in these London sessions that we get a trend direction and then we get a reversal in another direction. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of these sell positions, and I'm going to go ahead and take that loss even before I get to stop loss, for the reason being that I don't like being in a range, right? I'd much rather take a initial loss when I don't see market structure doing what I would like it to do, and then wait for it to play out. As I explained, there is our buy opportunity. The 30,500 is where I'd like to be buying. I'd like to be selling below the 30,400 mark. We can see that 30,400 might be adjusted to the 30,351 because we might have support structures at that 88.2 and the 78.6 just below us. So it might mean that we are definitely going to start to look at only, or my personal capacity, I'm only going to be looking for sells along this region. Now, in addition to that, it's not always great or advisable if you look at trading and a strategy to be trading without enough sleep. It's obviously one of the first no-nos, or the first big no-nos when it comes to trading, is you want to be mentally fully there, which I'm not 100% today, if I'm absolutely honest. So I'm pretty happy to close out those trades. When I see something I don't like, I prefer to take a loss temporarily, live to trade another day, live to trade another session, and then look towards more sessions for more opportunities. That's essentially what I'm going to be doing this morning. In addition to that, we also have obviously this diagonal market structure that we've not only played through, but we're also bouncing around resistance. So the second I see a market going through resistance and support as if it's butter, that tells me that market participants are not fully there. We're seeing some external influences on that particular market structure. So similar thing on NASDAQ, we got a little bit of a halt there. It could be very well my system or my terminal, as per normal. Team's still trying to figure out. They don't necessarily know why, but I still do get those disconnects from time to time. But it is what it is. It makes trading conditions a little bit harder, but that's fine. As long as the risk management's in place, we're good to go. So nothing potentially I'm seeing as tradable this morning. USD/JPY still to the sky, makes absolutely no sense. We obviously know that the Asian market's obviously struggling on their own with their own economic and fundamental issues. If we look at the development and building crisis with Evergrande, there's obviously a bunch of issues there. But if you have a look at it, right, in the space of, let's take it as from September last year, so year to date, the yen has essentially lost from 110 or 108 yen to the dollar to 149 yen to the dollar. The yen has literally lost 50% of its value, right, in 1 year in relation to the dollar. Now, is that a true reflection of the yen's performance, right, or is that an imbalance in the dollar? I don't know. That is obviously going to be the big question. Okay, yeah. So guys, unfortunately, a very slow session. As I explained, the start of the week, when we have a very busy week, when we have a very massive week, then we generally see a slower week in the coming weeks, and that is obviously the market's just understanding and absorbing all this data. We did get a massive spike this morning on US30. It happened around about 6:15. Markets woke up and just did a 1,500 pip spike to the top side, and then did a pullback. I'm not 100% sure why that is. I tried to look into the data, and I'm not seeing anything particularly interesting that is calling or justifying that move. But yeah, for this afternoon, or for this morning, however, I'm not looking at any of these structures as super attractive. So I'm pretty happy to lead out of that and look at some fundamental data coming in to support a buy or sell, primarily on the dollar. So again, a weaker dollar will be buy opportunities and indices. A stronger dollar, I don't know how much further indices can collapse than where they currently are at. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know at what point Wall Street steps in, or if this is part of a bigger plan. I don't know, but we obviously have to just look at the price action at this point. If we're still getting that stronger dollar, again, it just means that the Fed is obviously going to come in a massive way on the 2nd of November, which is less than 2 weeks from now. But that's literally, I believe that's next week, Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check the date. Oh no, sorry, yeah, 2 weeks from now. Just shy of 2 weeks from now. So it's not next week Wednesday, it's the following week Wednesday. We're going to get that Federal Reserve interest rate decision. That's going to be massive. That's going to be a big mover. You obviously want to be paying attention to that. But in terms of the rest of the markets, I don't see opportunities I'm liking. If there's anything you guys see, definitely let me know. Brent at this point is again in the middle of the sky. I don't see anything from a buy opportunity. My original Brent buy ideas were rather sitting in this $98 to a barrel, right? That's where my original buys were sitting. That if we break that $98, that's where I'll be looking to start getting into some buys, breaking that previous high, signaling we're making a new high. That's ideally where I want to be. But for the rest of the markets, I'm not seeing anything too interesting this morning. US 30 in a range, and it's a really choppy range, right? So it's meaning that let's just have a look here. You know, anytime you have to put more than 1,000 pips in a stop loss just to cover the range, it's just too much risk, right? It means that your risk reward ratio, if you're looking at 1,000 pips for a range or stop loss, it means you need to at least be targeting 3,000 pips to have a risk reward ratio of 1 to 3. Now, when you're in a range, the breakout is uncertain, right? So you're risking 1,000 pips to maybe make 3 if you catch the range and direction correctly. Obviously, a range is good for scalping, but other than that, it's just not my type of trading that I want to be involved in. So this afternoon, we are going to MACD on, no, Quade, no, unfortunately not for this morning. I'm not going to be setting up indicators. You guys are welcome to have a look at that. The MACD more than likely is showing a buy. Based on price action, I can tell you now, the MACD more than likely is showing some buy momentum for US 30. But yeah, we're not going to set up custom instruments here. You're welcome to ask in the dollars for lunch. That is our premium show. I'll take requests to do analysis, but not in the free broadcasts. Outside of that, guys, yeah, I'm going to catch some rest this morning. So I won't be online for the next couple of hours, and we'll refresh and recharge to make sure that we are intact and ready for a powerful dollars for lunch. We obviously want to wrap up this week super strong. I do believe this dollars for lunch session this afternoon will be powerful. We'll see the same thing we saw yesterday. So let's see if we can catch that fundamental data. Let's see if we can catch some big moves in the market this afternoon and see how many big pips we can bank. I feel if we can close off a day with about 2,000 or 3,000 trading pips, that'll be a good way to wrap up a Thursday as we obviously wrap up and head up for this week. So that's going to be ideal. Quade, any of your questions, please bring them into dollars for lunch. We will take time and look at those items. But yeah, on US 30, up to you whether you want to hold a range. It's still technically a bear market, but I'm not happy in holding a range. You guys know how I do things. But outside of that, obviously keep your eyes peeled for that US data. If you don't have your $100 account, you're not going to be joining us. Keep peeled for that US data, and we will do that together a little bit later this afternoon. And until I see you guys then, remember the dollars for lunch session is going to be a little bit earlier today. You just want to be aware of that. We are going to start that session at 2:15. I'll do some systems checks to make sure that we obviously don't have any streaming issues, and yeah, we will deal with that a little bit later. So until I see you guys then, goodbye.